What do you got for me?
What's wrong with you people?
I got nothing for you.
What's wrong?
You're not David. How y'all feel this morning? I feel rotten. That's how I feel. Well, that was enough for me. We could have had the benediction right there. That was so good.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to The Reformatory, the podcast for the local church and by the local church, and we are your local churchmen. My name is Josh, and I'm here, as always, with the captain, Jack Barry. Jack, my friend, how has the week been?
It's been good. Dude, been hitting the gym, been focusing on the healths, almost down, almost at 8 pounds down since the beginning of the month, so...
There you go.
Fun times.
Attaway.
So
that's awesome. Yep. Yeah, we're both kind of doing the same thing. So it just means life sucks, but in a good way. And that's fine.
I'm not sucking that bad. Let's say that. I'm actually my personal trainer, like, he's really good at my diet and stuff like that. He's like, hey, if you're following these things, it's like you're gonna be good. So don't worry about it. Keep going. So
yeah, it's consistency. That's what it is. All right, that's how it works. Yeah.
I do have an all-day trip tomorrow to Yakima and back again. So
okay,
that's gonna be
ouch.
That's gonna be a doozy. So after we're recording this episode, I got to pick up my rental car. So
okay, yeah, gross, man. Yeah, Yakima. Hey, have fun.
I was born in Yakima. So
I know. I mean, yeah, you're going home, man. yeah, going home. White trash.
I don't know about
white
home.
trash. The center of white trash. Yeah.
The Palm Springs of Washington, Josh. The Palm Springs of Washington.
Yeah,
remember that?
Okay.
Remember that sign?
Yeah.
Do you remember that sign where they used to have it out there? Oh my gosh!
I do.
Yeah.
And then they made him take it down because no one in their right mind would actually believe that.
And we would always wonder, does Palm Springs in California say that it's the Yakima of California?
No.
Not in their
it's
life.
Palm Springs in that, they have drugs. They've got gangs and drugs. So in that way, sure. Yeah, it's the Palm Springs. Yeah. We didn't say how it was the Palm Springs. We just said that it was. Yeah, exactly. Oh, my goodness. All right, Jack, we've got some fun things to cover today. But as always, we would be remiss if we do not hit everyone's favorite segment. Don't forget to eat your Instagrams.
And now's the time you've all been waiting for. The Reformatory Podcast presents Don't Forget to Eat Your Instantgrams with your hosts, Josh Loftus and Jack Barry. And remember, kids, it's not heresy if you believe it hard enough.
This is Don't Forget to Eat Your Instantgrams. And remember, kids, it's not heresy if you believe it hard enough. That is how it works, my friends. Jack, my friend, I've got some funny ones for you today. This one's pretty great. I'm just gonna let this one ride. This was captured at a worship service in which the pastor was really trying his best to set the mood for, create an environment for this Holy Spirit to work, because we all know the Holy Spirit needs us to do that in order for him to do his work. And that moment was foiled by one of the musicians, and the pastor here, if that's what you want to call him, was not content to let it go.
See the things that Jesus can do in your life. I want you to lift one hand up real quick and we'll pray. I see you. Eddie, get off the drums. Just go sit down. Lift your hand. If that's you, I saw someone's hand. Lift your hand. Eddie, get off the drums and sit down. I saw your hand. Is there anyone else? Well, Eddie, get off the drums right now.
Eddie is not moving, dude. Eddie is
holding firm. Eddie
is
firm and
stay
steady
right
fast.
there. Right there.
Go in the corner, give me 20 push-ups, and then go back to your seat. If that's you, well, Eddie just ruined your first spiritual moment. With every head bowed, every eye closed, because I thought someone got shot. I saw someone lift their hand. Don't let Eddie ruin the moment for you.
Dude,
if you raised your hand, will you come to the front right now?
Dude, free my man Eddie.
Dude.
Like, dude.
Poor Eddie. Dude, throwing Eddie under the bus because somebody didn't get saved. That is a wild take.
That is a
Driscoll-esque
level of confrontation right there, dude. Eddie accidentally drops the drumstick on the snare, and this guy does not let him forget.
Bro.
Eddie, get off. Eddie, I'm serious. Get off. Go in the corner. Give me 20 push-ups and sit down. What are you, his dad?
Yeah.
Like,
get out of here.
If Eddie ruined your first spiritual moment, raise your hand.
Such a bush league move, dude.
Dude, Eddie went home that day and he's like, dude, like I'm the devil. Satan used me tonight, mama. All right. This one's not so much bad as that I thought it was actually a solid point, a great point, and I actually really enjoyed it. So this will kind of lead into some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today.
And before you leave that church talking about, I'm not being fed over there, maybe it's time for you to start helping serve the meal. One more time,
No. That's not how this works.
I thought it was a great point.
That's not how this works, guys. That was terrible.
Maybe it's time for you to start serving the meal. Here's the thing. Here's what's an interesting thing is that although it's
so dumb.
I think there is room for this conversation on both sides of this.
Okay.
Right. And I think this is the interesting part of the conversation is that you have on one side individuals who do struggle with simply being takers in church and don't want to commit to serving the body. And then you have people on the other side who genuinely need care and support and to be fed in a season where the church just is not providing that, right? And I think context matters here, where let's say you have a place like Mars Hill where it was very much like you put your life, on the altar.
Yeah.
You make sacrifices for the church. But then when it comes time to actually be invested in or needing some care, needing support, it's not there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. That's a real thing. But on the flip side, there's also churches and individuals, because of the very individualistic mentality that we have today, there's individuals that engage in church, I would say, with a very self-focused mentality.
Oh yeah.
And a way of going about viewing the service, like how the service is structured, the events or the quote unquote programs that the church has, the relationship with fellow brothers and sisters, the relationship with the elders, and they view it through a lens of how is this benefiting me? How is this feeding me? How am I getting what I need? But there's not a whole lot of reciprocation. And this, I think, we run into perhaps a lot more in some of the circles that it's probably both. I don't want to quantify it. It's probably half and half, but I do think that there is something to be said for both these sides of the arguments, because I think Jack and I have both experienced both of these. And I think the context matters. I look at it definitely from a pastoral position in that, okay, I know the level of care that I'm giving to the church. I know the level of care that my fellow elders are giving to the church. The reality is, and this is what I think is important to talk about, and why, tongue in cheek, that video kind of sparks the conversation.
Yeah.
There's going to be some people where no matter what you do, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a reality of ministry. That's the reality of being in relationships in the local church. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard thing to swallow and deal with sometimes, but it is true. And I know that Jack and I have both run into those types of people where, like no matter how much you care, how much time you give, how much you make yourself available, at the end of the day, it's not enough for those people.
Yeah.
And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you have kind of made your life about serving those in your local church. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think from from a serving standpoint and like more of like a deacon side of the coin, I will say this: in Mars Hill, there was an expectation, if you are to be known in the church, you will serve.
Right.
That's not right. That's just not right, folks. Like, for you to be known in the church, like, you just need to come and then just start showing up, really. That's really...
there's some people who aren't in a season of life where serving would be good for them or good for the church.
Yeah. So, and that carried over into when the Mars Hill churches went independent, I think, as well too. A lot of them felt that way. And some of them bucked back against that culture, but some of them. But in order for you to be known, you have to serve, right? And I feel like the bare minimum of you being known in a local church is you showing up and coming to the Lord's Day service.
Yeah.
That's how you should be known. And then from there, relationships should start taking hold. And I think Josh and I live in a particularly different culture than the rest of the United States. I think in the Pacific Northwest, we are way more introverted and not willing to have those relationships or seek out those people, because just that's what our culture here kind of festers. It festers this like Seattle freeze where like you don't say anything to anybody, you don't talk to people, you don't say hello, you don't be friendly, stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's part of it. But I also think that once you become a committed member of your local church, there needs to be a serving rhythm. And you can figure that out. I mean, for us, like the bar's pretty low at my local church. Once a month, if you're serving once a month, that's great. For some of us who are like, hey, like we've been through leadership training, we've done all this stuff. Dude, sometimes I'll be serving communion. Like this last Lord's Day, we didn't have an extra security guy. So I'm just like, well, my son and my wife stayed home because my son was sick. So I'm like, whatever, I'll be security then. So I gotta be on the security team. Plus I gotta read the scripture and pray right before the sermon. Plus I gotta serve communion. To me, that's not that difficult because I know that. And that's honestly, in my opinion, that's how I do ministry in a certain dynamic. And that doesn't really burn me out. I do get days off. I do get Lord's days off. Believe me, I do. So there's a rest component to that. But yeah, there's some times where people need to step up. And if you haven't been in those type of situations, like you're not going to be looked at as like, oh, that's somebody that I can go to. But once you become a member of your local church, like you should want to chip in and do stuff for your local church, because really like that's your investment. That's your deposit into the kingdom, really. And if you aren't serving in that capacity, that's a little bit troubling. And you're just kind of on the sideline. Now, there's a difference, I think, in seasons of life too. We have a lot of older folks sometimes. Mm-hmm. To where they're at the stage of their life where their mobility is shot or they just can't serve in certain capacities. So I totally get that. But if you're, 30 and below, right? If you're 30 years old and below and you can do stuff.
Grab some chairs.
Yeah,
you got energy. You got energy.
We're set up. I mean, you guys are set up in teardown, right? We're set up in teardown. Yeah, we're set up in teardown too. So it's like the easiest way, honestly, the easiest way to be known and to establish relationships in our local church. Just volunteer for a setup teardown day, and you'll start to cultivate relationships with like 5 different guys in the church. And there you go. Yeah. You've already started to bridge into community.
Yeah, it's not hard.
Where a lot of things are now, like I said, that doesn't mean like, whoa, you're serving and you get to be known during serving. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't excuse the fact that your bare minimum on Sunday should just be showing up to the Lord's Day service, fellowshipping. I feel like every Sunday, in my mind, at least, I had this epiphany a while ago. I'm not saying it's a direct 1-for-1 correlation, but it feels like every time like I go to a Lord's Day service now, it feels like a component of being on a sports team again. Like there's a camaraderie that you have. There's a development of relationship that you have and care for people. And so I don't know, for me, that's kind of like it, but I mean, it's more than that. I mean, I can only liken it to that because that's something familiar that I know, but yeah, just
sure.
But to say flippantly, if you aren't being served, you are the one that should be serving the meal. It's like, all right, hold up. What you mean by that?
And I guess I looked at that. I guess I looked at that video a little differently. I guess, in my mind, here's the thing. You always have specific situations in your head, right? And when she said that, I was like, actually, in the context that I find myself, that's a great point. But yeah, just kind of out of context, I could see how that video would rub some people wrong.
Yeah.
I just liked how sassy she said it. But the reality is, just like you're saying, when we're thinking about serving in the local church and you're encouraging people to serve in the local church, you got to understand context. You got to understand people's, what situation God has them in. Because if someone's new in the local church, right, like I don't know them, they don't know us. It's not going to be a beneficial thing for them to be serving right now. Let's take some time. Let's get to know each other, right? Let's have some relationships formed and some trust built. And then we can explore that, right? Sometimes the person is a member and they are in a season where they're just super busy and super tired. There's got a lot going on. Yeah, let's take a break, right? Yeah. That's not a failure. That's just a reality of where the Lord has you. The context that is hard to deal with is the one that I brought up at the beginning, where you're going to have individuals in your church that have very high expectations of you as elders, of you as members. And often what I have found, more than not, 9 times out of 10, those expectations are not met with the same level of service that those expectations desire from other people. Right. I've been in many situations in ministry where you pour into somebody, you invest into somebody, you give of your time, right? And all these good things, all the things that you're supposed to do, right? And you do it because you care about the person. But then the accusations, like something will happen. Either you'll preach something they don't like, or you'll have a busy season yourself and you can't get together. All right. Something always happens that creates some sort of break in that momentum, break in that schedule. And then the accusations start coming that, they're not getting fed. They're not getting poured into. They're not getting discipled. They have a concern of, this and this, that, and you're left scratching your head like, that is not at all how I assessed this situation. Yeah. Right. So in that, and that's a common thing. And I'm sure anyone who's been in ministry for any amount of time has run across those individuals that, for lack of, I'm not trying to be ungracious. Right. But I guess just a little behind the scenes, like shop talk, I guess. You have individuals in your church that will leech your time. And it's just a fact. right? Now, how we deal with that and how we respond to that is important, right? And we have to make sure that we do it biblically. What I have found often helps is that you have conversations with that individual, asking them questions about the expectations that they have. Because if those accusations are getting hurled at you, you know, you're not spending enough time, I'm not feeling fed, I'm not feeling like I'm being discipled, right? Like all the ones that you'll get, time to ask some questions. Like, okay, if you're not feeling that, you know, like, what are your expectations of what discipleship look like? When you think about, you know, care from a pastor, what does that look like in your head practically? And more often than not, you're going to find some very unrealistic expectations about what care or discipleship looks like for that individual.
Yeah.
And whether that is just them being overly needy, maybe they've had bad expectations taught to them in past churches, right? Maybe they've come from a bad situation and they're kind of, you know, pendulum swinging to the other side. There can be a lot of factors there. But asking questions, figuring out what those expectations are, and then shepherding through those expectations is the big key. Because if I see that you're going to have unrealistic expectations, those aren't going to go away unless we address those biblically, right? And so, okay, why do you have those expectations? You know, why do you think that expectation is realistic? If I were to have that expectation with every member in my church or everyone that came through the doors, how is that, like, how does that work out, right? And at the end of the day, you end up seeing, it's like, well, they want the expectation for them, but not a whole lot of other people, right? Now, that's not every case. You're going to have individuals in your church who are either going through something, you know, are in a stage of life where this requires that are going to be very needy, and that's okay. Being needy in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? We meet those needs and we come along those people. We come alongside those people, right? When those times call for it. But the one that I'm specifically talking about are those individuals that just have an unhealthy expectation of what care looks like in the local church. You're going to have to deal with those. Yeah. Because those are going to spread to the elders. Those are going to spread to their expectations on what fellowship looks like to the other members, right? And sometimes some hard conversations need to be had and some expectations need to be set, obviously in grace and humility, but you know, you need to understand that we should not be viewing the local church primarily as what do we get out of it. Yeah. Right. And that's where I agree with the sentiment of that lady at the beginning is if that's your entire sentiment and your entire outlook to the local church, yeah, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And that's going to create problems because maybe instead of thinking primarily, what am I getting out of the local church? You should be thinking, what can I put into the local church? How can I be serving? How can I be investing? Because what I have found personally is that one of the greatest remedies to self-focusedness is service. And if you're struggling with being self-focused in one way or another, there's nothing that will cure that faster than serving other people. Mm. And often I have found the things that I knew that I needed as an individual were met and solved as I was pressing into the local church to serve. It's not that there aren't times where you need some special care and some special, one-on-one time with a pastor. That's totally appropriate. Absolutely. But be plugged in because it's the whole body of believers that covenant together to care for one another, right? It's one of the things that we preach about being Reformed Baptists is that the pastors are members first. Yeah. We're members of the same church and we're all on that same level in that respect. And that we're all called to invest in one another, encourage one another and be there for one another. So, just some thoughts. Yeah. Just an interesting takeaways as you look at the different dynamics of some members in the church.
It's interesting too. So we start off we took a break from John, the Gospel of John, and we're going through actually 2 Corinthians, chapter 8. and it talks about the generosity of the Macedonian church. These people were the poorest of the poor when it comes to churches, and they were still giving money to the offering in Jerusalem. And Paul talks about that. And we're talking about what does generosity mean during the series as we go through that text and as we look at it from different angles. And the biggest thing that one of my pastors talked about on the Lord's Day last Sunday was just, you're not going to have and you're not going to develop generosity or be generous unless you have margin in your life. If you don't have margin in your life, you're not going to, and that goes for anything. If you don't have margin in your finances, maybe if you don't have margin just to give of yourself, of your time.
What does fake butter have to do with any of this? Sorry.
That's margarine.
I'm sorry.
You're killing me.
We should just end the app. I'm sorry. We should just end the episode.
This needs to be Old Yeller. Josh needs to be taken out.
So put me down.
Put a bullet.
Put me down now. That's my bad.
Anyway, margin. Margin is the key to it.
Margin.
Not margarine, but margin. Yeah. If you don't have margin in that, then you're not gonna cultivate that, or you're not gonna take the risk in order to cultivate that more. Right. So, yeah.
That
was my final thought.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I think that's a good thought. Right. I think we got to be open-handed in our care, but also not so open-handed that you burn yourself out. And you cater to unhelpful or unbiblical expectations of people within your church, right? Part of shepherding is, having those hard conversations. So you got to discern, okay, is this person truly in a stage where they need some extra care? They need some extra attention, right? This sheep is hurting. So we're going to hold this person a little longer than we would someone else, right? That's absolutely appropriate. And there are situations where that is much needed. Like, hey, we're going to meet on a weekly basis and until, we work through these things. That's different than the individual who has an unrealistic expectation of care and believes that they are owed some sort of, certain amount of meetings because that's what pastors do, right? It's like, well, no, sometimes, and if you're in a situation where that calls for that, absolutely, that's what we will do. But also you need to have realistic expectations of what it looks like to be fed in the local church, and what it looks like to, help serve the meal. And that is important to keep those things in balance. So yeah, little interesting riff ep off the cuff there. Jack and I we talked today and we're like, man, like our topic list is kind of low. And I'm like, I've got this video. It's going to spark a good convo. But something that we would like to do for all listeners, anybody who is listening to this, if you have questions for us, anything that you would like us to discuss or talk about, local church related, ministry related, and honestly, anything, we would love to do a little mail, like grab bag, a little mail ep, whether that be actual messages that you send us. You could send us audio. You could send us audio messages. We could figure out a way to play those on here. We would love to hear from our listeners and hear about some things that you would like us to discuss. Any questions or comments that you have, we would love to do an ep on that. That'd be a lot of fun for us. So make sure to be thinking up those and send us what you got, because we would love to do an episode where we answer some questions and have some good discussion that way. So Jack, my friend, why don't you get us out of here?
Yeah, if you appreciate Josh and I's riffings sometimes that actually lead into good and prosperous discussions about the local church.
Prosperous.
And
profitable,
profitable, prosperous discussions about the local church and serving in your local church. Like I said, you can follow us on the Sociables, and if you follow us on the Instagram, goes roll with chocolate or marshmallow, even a little sprinkle of heresy, you can hit that voice record button and send us a little message that way to us at the Reformatory. just at Reformatory Pod. You can follow us on the Facebook as well too at the same tag, and the Sociable, formerly known as Twitter X. All at those tags at Reformatory Pod. Like Josh said, leave a comment, a question. Maybe you're like trying to figure out, hey, how do I go about this certain situation in my local church? Keep it a little bit more on the vague side, and we can talk it through. On
No gossip.
Yeah, no gossip.
Call out gossip
But
right then and there.
you need to. We would love to kind of like come alongside you all, not as your pastors, but as fellow brothers in Christ, to kind of develop and put a little bit more meat on that bone to give you more wisdom.
That's right.
In the direction of where you should go in that. So, Josh, you can tell the lovely people how they might support us further here in our endeavors.
That's right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support us by heading over to YouTube if you want to watch this as well as listen to it. It makes the Instagrams a lot more fun for sure. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications, as the kids say. We'd greatly appreciate that. Love you to share this episode with a friend. Share the Reformatory around. It would be really cool to hear some new listeners join the fold. That would be pretty great. If you chose to do that, you can leave us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. That's always really cool. Last but not least, we have a Patreon, just like every other podcast does, but ours is awesome. Ours is fun. Cool stuff happens over on ours. And it's the best part about it is it's only $5. It's $5 a month, and that's less than a Starbucks coffee, because man, coffees are expensive these days. So if you're feeling some nice Starbucks, maybe take one of those drinks a month. Throw it over to the Reformatory. You get bonus eps every month. You get this episode early. You get the Reformatory chat. A lot of cool stuff happening over there. It's all exclusive content. It's really, really great. If you choose to do so, our pledge to you is that your name shall be hallowed.
Hallowed, sir. Hallowed.
Hallowed through the halls of the podcast. That is our pledge to you. We thank you all for listening, and we will catch you on the next step of the Reformatory.